Okay, today I want to talk about something I get asked about a lot, especially around election season here in the UK, and that is, what is it actually like watching UK elections as an American? Because the differences are quite wild, and I say that with absolute love, mostly. So in America, like I said, it's almost always election season. We have elections at many different levels: the national level, the federal level. We have senators, we have Congress people, we have the United States president. And then you have state level, where you have governor who runs the state. Also, you have the state governing body, which is the legislative body that you have to elect. You also have local county elections, local council elections, your town council, and also school board election. The school district that you live in also has its own little governing board. Plus, some places also you have to elect judges, and you have to elect like sheriffs and police captains and things like that. Like I said, always an election going on. But if you weren't aware of all the levels of election, it is really hard to miss that there's an election coming up in the United States. It's always the same time of year, typically November for most of them, at least for the national ones and the big ones. But it's always the same time of year. It's always the same distance in between. The term limits don't change ever. It's usually indicated on the United States calendars, and you can kind of plan around it. And you have to, because you have to be able to register. You have to be able to basically work around your work schedule, because it's not like you get the day off or anything. And your whole life, especially for national elections, kind of comes down to what happens on the second Tuesday of November. You can't not know the date's coming. That's what I'm trying to say. But in the UK, they do have standard election times, especially for national elections. But the Prime Minister can also just call an election if they want, which I had no idea was even a possibility. Everyone I asked about it is completely calm, and they're just like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's what happened. And I was like, really? To me, the first time I heard it, I honestly thought they were joking. I thought it was one of those British things they were trying to get me on. Like, you can just wake up on a random Wednesday morning and check your phone, and the Prime Minister has just announced, oh, there's going to be a general election in 6 weeks. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. 6 weeks? Really? I'm just thinking, like, in America, we've been watching campaign ads for like a year and a half. And you're telling me this whole thing wraps up in 6 weeks? I have to be honest, I'm a little jealous of that. Okay, that's how you definitely know there's an election going on in the United States. Besides the fact that there's almost always an election going on, US campaigning is constant. You're just constantly being fed campaigning. It starts almost immediately after the previous election ends. You've got primaries, you've got debates, you have rallies, you've got the ads on television that are, oh my God, the ads, they're crazy. They're all the time. They're mean. They're lies, usually. By the time election day has actually arrived, you're completely exhausted. Like, if it's a national election, like for the president or something, the entire country is exhausted. It's just nonstop. It's all over social media, and you just never really get a break from it in the United States. In the UK, like I said, I didn't even know it was happening. I have gotten a few flyers put through my mail slot. What do you guys, I said mail slot, and people corrected me, but I forgot what it was called now. Anyway, I've gotten a few flyers. I've seen a few ads randomly, like on YouTube or whatever, but that's it. I didn't even know, I assume you guys have debates, but are they televised? Like, I don't even know. I think this week is local elections, so you wouldn't have as much brouhaha, at least here in England. Although I know there's elections in Wales and Scotland, which might be a bigger set of elections. I'm not 100% sure. That might be why I haven't seen anything like debates, where there isn't as much brouhaha. But what I've noticed living here is that British people have a completely different relationship with political noise. There's a tolerance, there is a limit, and everyone kind of respects it. Very British. Whereas in America, we just keep going and going and going until Nobody can even hear you or feels anything anymore at any particular ad. I don't know if 6 weeks is quite enough, but I also don't know if 18 months is truly healthy. So I think there's probably something in between. Although I guess if you're somebody that's informed and paying attention, 6 weeks is more than enough. Not sure about that. You guys let me know what you think. Do you think 6 weeks is enough, or do you think it should be closer to like a year or 18 months? Yeah, I have no idea. I have to think about that. I have to think about how I feel about that. The next is all about the Benjamins. Very American phrase. Okay, but this one is genuinely shocked me when I learned. And I think it might shock a lot of you guys too that aren't familiar with American politics. But in the 2024 US election cycle, there is a total amount of money spent across all of the races that was somewhere around $15 billion. Yeah, 15 billion with a B dollars in one election cycle. I don't know how y'all feel about that, but I am disgusted with the amount of people living in their cars, the amount of people that die because they don't have healthcare, the amount of kids that don't have any food and go hungry. $15 billion on ads and signs seems just really, really irresponsible, in my opinion, especially for political office and a national political office. It blows my mind. I'm wondering how you guys feel about that. Because I heard that in the UK, there's actually a legal spending limit per constituency. A little bit different, I think, also because you vote for your local MP. You're not voting for president, or you're not voting for prime minister on top of like your local representative. And I think that spending limit is like per district, which is incredible. And it's usually around like 20,000 pounds, I was told. Like 20,000 pounds, is that even enough for a down payment on a house here? Sorry, I'm not laughing at you necessarily. It's just laughing at the huge disparity and how overblown and honestly a little bit sick to my stomach I feel about it. 20,000 pounds per seat, basically, is what is spent here in the UK for campaigning, while the United States spends more than that on just printing in one single state, most likely. And it's not just a guideline. I've heard as well, the Electoral Commission, I think it is, actually enforces it. You can't just like outspend your opponent, which happens a lot in America, which is why a lot of the not so great candidates, in my opinion anyway, get elected, is because the really good candidates don't get as much corporate PAC money, which is basically big business, big moneyed interest, to donate to their campaign, because they might actually affect change and create new policies, whereas the people who they do donate to tend to kind of, put them first rather than the people of the United States first. And they basically buy elections legally, but that's basically what they do. But here you can't do that. You can't just raise more money. You have actual rules that are actually enforced, and it is quite refreshing, although baffling, I must say, as an American. Now, I do know that some people would say that the UK system has its own issues with money. I know there's lots of lobby and influence still here, and that's completely fair, and you should definitely do everything we can to put some more checks and balances on that, because you don't want to turn into what America is. But the scale, if you put those numbers side by side, is just, I don't know, my mind is blown still thinking about it. And when I see $15 billion and what it buys, mostly ads that make people miserable and most people don't even pay attention to or assume that that person's lying anyway because, they're a politician and their lips are moving, then I start to wonder what else that money could do. As I mentioned, there's tons and tons of things that could buy, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to read this out because I always mess it up. both countries actually use what's called first past the post voting. It's a single winner voting rule, meaning each voter marks one candidate as their favorite, first preference, and the candidate with the most first preference votes than any other candidate is elected, even if they do not have more than half the votes. This is where it gets interesting and definitely more complicated because, America. When you're voting for the President of the United States directly, well, kind of directly, there is actually what's called an electoral college, which means you're technically voting for electors in your state who then cast real votes on your behalf. And those are the votes that are counted, not necessarily your specific vote, which is why you can win more votes overall and still lose the election, which has happened many times. Very old school, convoluted system that definitely, in my opinion, needs to change. I'm just going to leave that one there as well. In the UK, you are voting for your local MP, your member of parliament, and the party that wins enough seats forms the government. So it's really a collection of like 650 local elections happening at the same time. They're not really happening at the same time. I think there's some local elections every year, depending on who's been in. I don't know those details. I'm sure you guys do though. You can let me know in the comments the specifics about that. The weird thing about first past the post in both countries is that you can get millions of votes nationally and end up with almost no representation if those votes aren't concentrated in the right areas, which is insane. Both countries have talked about changing their systems and both countries have not changed their systems. So we're all just kind of living with it and winging it as we go. Given the two systems and how convoluted and complicated it is to elect anything in the United States, I think I would at least like to elect my local MP, and then hopefully that is a majority party that can form a government for the national service and the national interest. This one takes a little bit to get your head around until you understand the voting system here, right? Because in America, the president is the president. You vote for the person. You don't vote for the party. You can vote for the president as a person from one party and then every other person that's representing you in the federal government in a completely different party if you want. And once they're in for 4 years, that they serve their term. And you have to re-elect them or they leave. They're supposed to leave after 2 terms, 8 years. And the only way they would leave early is if they died or if something very, very serious happened and they resigned. It's very difficult to unseat the president. That has only happened, I think, once. That was Nixon. That's the only one I remember, at least in recent history. Most of the time, you are not going to get that person out of that seat once they get there, at least for the 4 years that they were elected. Here in the UK, you don't actually vote for the Prime Minister directly. As I mentioned, you vote for your local MP, and the leader of the party that wins the most seats becomes the Prime Minister. And it's decided by the representatives of the party, which means the Prime Minister can change without a general election at all. I think you can do a vote of no confidence. I've heard that a few times since I've been here. And the actual party can decide whether or not they want a new leader, and they can do it suddenly if they so desire. No public vote, no election, just done. And I know this sounds chaotic from an American perspective, but from a British perspective, they usually tell me at least we can get rid of someone who isn't working, which I kind of agree with, and it's a very fair point. Do I feel like it might actually benefit the United States to have a little escape clause like that where the general public can have more influence? I think there might probably be some cases made for that, definitely. So here's the part of the video where a lot of people asked me what I prefer, like if there is a preference, if I think one is better than the other. Honestly, I don't know. I don't even know if that's really the right question I'm asking. I've definitely come to appreciate living here in the UK, the system, and that it feels in some ways much more human and much more democratic and representative of the public. I do like that the campaigns are shorter and quieter by far, so people don't completely tune out, although there is some of that anyway. And I definitely enjoy the spending limits as well. I mean, I like the fact that it's not purely a money game. There's something about the pace of it that feels a little less like performance and a little more like an actual process. Also a plus. But I grew up believing in directness of voting for your leader, and there's something kind of powerful for that too. Neither system is perfect, definitely, but what I do know is that living in a different country between these two worlds has definitely made me much more curious and a much more humble person when it comes to how democracy works, and that one way is definitely not the only way or the best way, because neither country really has a perfect system figured out, even though I think both countries probably love to think they do. But that, in the end, might be the most human thing of all. I'm curious if any of you have lived through both elections, you know, US and UK, and I'd love to hear your take. Seriously, drop it down below, and yeah, just let me know what you think. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and consider becoming a member of the Mandyverse. I'd love to have you. Until next time, I'll see you around, because it's only better when you're there. Bye, y'all.